Severe weather is back in the forecast. We have some more powerful thunderstorms moving across portions of the eastern US, portions of the northern US. These will be very impactful to some of the communities they hit. We're watching out for some damaging winds, some tornadoes, and just back-to-back days of severe weather with a storm system crossing over the northeast. We're also tracking some very interesting developments in the Gulf. It's looking more and more likely that we could have our next tropical system of the season, which could bring impacts to the southeast US. The weather pattern is turning very active out there. Today is Sunday, July 19th, and today in the Weather World we'll break down all the details so you can prepare for what's coming. So to get a handle of where severe weather will be most likely over the next few days, let's take a look at the upper level wind pattern. So what we're seeing here, this is a jet stream. These are fast moving ribbons of air way up high in the atmosphere, but this is what gives us the energy and the instability often for storms. And the really big thing popping out is in the northeast. This is a trough of low pressure. You can see all these fast moving winds up in the atmosphere. This can create some lift and create enough shear for some storms and even a few tornadoes. This will be moving further off to the east. However, across portions of the mid-east and mid-Atlantic, we still have that strong northeasterly to easterly flow. So this will create a few new storms in this region that we're tracking for today on Sunday. The other area that we're tracking is some of these more elevated wind speeds in some of the northern plains. A few storm complexes are going to form and move eastward along this jet. So these are the two areas. Now as we go into Monday, look at this intense jet streak that's setting up across the Midwest and the northern plains. This is going to contribute to a locally stronger risk of severe weather on Monday. As of this recording, we already have a day 3 enhanced risk of severe weather. This could go even higher by the time we get closer. So we're watching out for the Midwest on Monday. It doesn't necessarily end there though. After that, we still have a lot of wind energy over the eastern and northeastern US associated with this trough. So this is going to keep driving the severe weather further to the southeast, and we're going to get another round of storms in the mid-Atlantic and portions of New England as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. So we're going to go day by day. Here's our severe weather outlook for today, Sunday. Keep in mind I'm recording this on Saturday, so it might look a little different by Sunday, but in general we have an area of severe weather across the Carolinas extending a little further west into Tennessee. The slight risk centered around North Carolina. That's where you want to be most concerned for a few stronger cells. And then we're also tracking the severe weather risk across the northern plains, northern South Dakota, Minnesota, and in that slight risk we have Grand Forks, Jamestown, just to name a few places. So especially this region in the northern plains, this is where I am a little bit more concerned about the severe weather. Both of these spots we definitely want to watch out for some stronger storms, especially in these yellow shades. No tornado risk, that's the good news. Tornado threat is pretty low. The damaging wind threat though, both areas could see some gusty winds, which is pretty common in the summertime. So both these areas we want to watch out for. Now on Monday, this is where we have an enhanced risk as of this recording, centered to the northwest of Chicago. So from northeast Iowa into most of central Wisconsin and far southeast Minnesota. An enhanced risk of severe weather this far out is pretty concerning. That means we have higher confidence on some higher end impacts. We have a broader slight to marginal risk in the green and yellow colors respectively. And this is because of that fast moving jet streak of winds that I showed you earlier up in the upper atmosphere. It'll make the environment pretty conducive for severe storms. So let's track things out. Waking up Sunday morning, it'll be pretty quiet, maybe a few decaying storms over South Dakota. We really have to wait until later in the day before across this whole corridor from the Carolinas westward into Kentucky, Tennessee, and Missouri, you can see all these storms just popping up with daytime heating. So pretty typical. We have a lot of moisture. We have a lack of upper level high pressure. So that's all we need in the summer for some of these garden variety thunderstorms. Now where they'll be a little more severe, again that's in that slight corridor across the Carolinas, extending a little bit further to the west. This is where the greatest instability is placed, where we could be dealing with some gusty winds. So these storms could be a little more disruptive. Maybe if you're going into some of the beaches in Carolinas, you'll definitely want to be weather aware. Some of these storms a little further to the east towards St. Louis and then down into the deep south. They won't be as strong, but they could still definitely wash out your plans with very heavy rain and some lightning. So staying weather aware there. Now focusing a little bit further to the north, that other risk of severe weather, it's also going to pop up later in the day. So as we get 3-4 o'clock, we're going to get a few storm clusters forming in North Dakota, maybe a few in southern Montana, and then later on in the evening, notice how these grow upscale into a few clusters of thunderstorms. So this is where damaging winds is really the main focus. We could have some squall lines of thunderstorms moving to the southeast along the jet stream. They'll move through the Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota, and then into Minnesota as we get into the overnight. And even looking on Monday morning, we could be still dealing with some rain in southern Minnesota. Keep in mind, this is kind of a mesoscale environment, so small changes in the atmosphere can lead to pretty big changes into where these storms form. I am pretty confident though we'll get a squall line somewhere in the northern plains moving further to the southeast, and whoever's in the path, you definitely want to watch out for some of these damaging winds. Going to a little bit of a longer range model, looking at Monday, we do have that enhanced risk of severe weather across portions of the Midwest, and notice that this is the RRFS model. Is pretty confident on generating some of these storms across this region Monday afternoon and Monday evening. The tornado threat on Monday could be a little bit more elevated than recent days. Some of these storms will both favor a few tornadoes possible as well as some damaging wind segments if we can get a few squall lines of storms moving through. So I would be prepared in this region. If you're in the enhanced to slight risk, be on the lookout for a few tornadoes possible later Monday afternoon with all the activity moving to the southeast as we go overnight. So we have severe weather today, we have severe weather tomorrow. Now remember how the jet stream remains amplified across portions of the Midwest to the northeast. I showed you the wind stream earlier. That's going to keep severe weather alive on Tuesday and Wednesday and shift all the threats further to the southeast. So on Tuesday, this is the general region where severe weather is possible. There will definitely be some adjustments with some fine tuning as we get a little more details, but anyone in the Ohio Valley region as far west as Indiana and Kentucky, and then as far east as Washington DC up to Pennsylvania, definitely this is a heads up that Tuesday we could be dealing with some rough storms in your area coming in from the northwest to southeast. It doesn't stop there though. On Wednesday we have some more severe weather moving even further to the east. So now we're talking from North Carolina to Virginia. DC is again under the gun, but a little bit further east into New Jersey and Philadelphia. You want to be on the alert for some severe thunderstorms on Wednesday. We can track some of this activity out on our extended model. So here's some of those strong storms possible from Wisconsin into Iowa on Monday. This is our severe weather risk. As we go into Tuesday, notice how everything just continues to the southeast, and that's going to be the trend. So Tuesday, that threat is in that slight risk from the Ohio Valley into Pennsylvania, Indiana. That's where we need to watch out for some of those strong storms. Notice the actual surface low pressure is all the way up here in Canada. It being this far away does lend a little bit of uncertainty, but just with how strong the jet stream is, we do think there's enough energy for some of these storms. Look at this on Wednesday, some of these nasty storms moving further to the southeast toward DC, and then eventually they'll move off the coast as we go later on Wednesday and eventually into Thursday. So it's going to be a multi-day event across this whole corridor starting Monday and Tuesday, and then every day the severe weather risk will creep further to the southeast. Each day will bring a different mix of hazards, whether it's tornadoes, whether it's damaging winds. I'll definitely keep you updated. I'll have another video tracking some of the more concrete details with this as we get closer, but an early heads up for a bit of a stormier pattern in this region early to midweek. Something else the jet stream dipping is doing is that it's bringing some cooler air to the northeast. It's going to feel very nice, especially for summer standards. So this is on Monday. We have highs in the 70s and 80s across the Midwest into the northeast. It's going to feel really nice. Look just a little bit further to your west across the plains. We could have temperatures as high as 110 degrees. So it's kind of a night and day difference depending on which side of the storms you're on. As we go later into the week though, some of that cooler air will continue invading into the Midwest and the northeast. We'll actually have a cold front of sorts. So highs in the 80s and 70s. That's very nice. Again, it's a tale of two sides though. If you're on the hot side of the cold front, which many of us a little further to the south will be, we're stuck in the triple digits. I just want to point out some of these morning temperatures. We could be in the 50s and upper 40s across portions of Michigan and Wisconsin Wednesday morning. Wouldn't that be so refreshing? It's going to be a little chilly. You might need a light jacket in the morning across the north. The colder air does move further south, so we're talking about St. Louis getting in. Even if it's not truly cold, at least it won't be as humid, so that'll definitely be nice. Wednesday could be one of the coolest days of the week where we have a combination of rain and that cold front. You could have widespread 60s and 70s for high temperatures across the northern plains. All of us down in the south, we're going to be eyeing you so enviously because we're going to be stuck in the 90s and triple digits with very humid conditions. But at least up in the north, we could have a bit of some cooler weather. Thursday morning, we're still talking about some 50s and 40s with highs only in the 70s. So all that activity happening in the east, that's the biggest weather story, the severe weather, some of that cooler air coming in. Meanwhile, on the west, we do have some activity as well. It's not going to be as organized, but we're going to have daily storm chances coming in from the monsoon. The monsoon in the southwest, this happens every summer. We have a lot of moisture coming in from the Pacific, and the environment sets up such that each afternoon we have these daily popcorn thunderstorms. So the way this works, if you're under the thunderstorm, it could be very heavy rain. We could have some brief flash flooding. If you're just a few miles away from the storm, you could miss out completely. So it's hit or miss. It's not one concentrated line of storms. It's just these popcorn thunderstorms firing up where you could get hit, but your neighbor could miss out, or vice versa. So we just want to be on guard every day for some of these storms, but it probably won't rain at your place every day. This is much needed. We have a lot of drought. We have a lot of wildfires going out here in the west. But it's going to be a pretty wet week with some of this monsoonal moisture. Some of the models are even indicating by Wednesday or Thursday we could get a little bit more concentrated activity moving a little bit further to the north before this eventually moves into the northern plains. So with that said, there is daily flash flood risks across the southwest in this region, but keep in mind, just because you're under the flash flood risk, it doesn't even mean you'll see rain every day. It just means if you see some of the rain, if you're one of the lucky ones who gets the downpour and not the ones who miss out, then you could see some locally heavy stuff. So especially in the yellow shade, a little bit further south in Arizona and New Mexico, each and every day you'll be highlighted for some of the greater coverage of storms. But the general region, even in the green to yellow, we're still watching out for some localized flash flooding. Two more stories to get to. Okay, so first let's talk about the tropics, because we have something spinning up that's actually looking more and more likely that could be our second named storm of the season. season out in the southeast US. So see this big swirl of convection, especially just south of the panhandle of Florida. This is associated with a broad area of low pressure that over the next few days is really going to be tightening together. So this storm is generally moving to the northwest, and in this orange area that we're circling here, this is where it has a chance of developing into a tropical depression, maybe even a low-end tropical storm. So taking a look at some of our models, notice we have this pretty big disorganized lump of thunderstorms as we go later into today and tomorrow off the coast. Right now this doesn't look anything tropical, but look at it trying to organize, especially with some of the wind speed. You can see the swirl of the winds very clearly here on the model. This is the storm trying to close off its low pressure center. If it can do that, the water is definitely warm enough where we could get a low-end tropical system over here. And even the presentation on radar here, the HRRR is trying to spin up some rain bands on the outside, maybe a swirl of low pressure center here. So it's looking somewhat convincing on some of the high resolution models. Now, if it does develop, it could carry a greater wind threat, maybe even a tornado threat with some of these outer rain bands. Right now, there's a whole lot of uncertainty as to where exactly this will go and if it would even make landfall if it does form. But it's definitely something to watch pretty closely in the southeast. Regardless, it does look like we'll have some heavy rain along the coast, so along the Florida coast, but even along Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. We want to be paying attention to this because we could be dealing with a tropical system on hand. At least according to this model, it looks pretty convincing as we go early to midweek. The biggest impact will definitely be rainfall, so we can see all this rain falling over the ocean, but some of it in the outer rain bands will move on shore. If this does develop and consolidate and strengthen a bit, we could be talking about more wind impacts and maybe a localized corridor of heavy rain. So still a lot of unknowns into the specifics, but again, if you're in this region of the southeast, all the way from New Orleans to Tallahassee and then even Tampa, you definitely want to be paying very close attention to this and preparing for maybe some possible flooding in this region. Doesn't look like we'll have any higher end tropical system, but even a weak tropical storm, it can cause a lot of problems. I'll have more updates in my next video of this later this week. And finally, to close out, I know many of us in the north have been experiencing a lot of smoke. We have these big fires in Canada, and with the active jet stream bringing in air from the north, that's making some very smoky days and just some very dangerous and hazardous air quality. So let's check out the future with our smoke forecast on the HRRR. In general, it does look like another plume of smoke is possible across the Midwest. So from Wisconsin down to Chicago, Sunday we could be dealing with some poor air quality in the morning, especially up north in the UP of Michigan and Wisconsin. That's where some of the higher smoke could be concentrated. It does look like the northeast, we've had some smoky skies over New York, over DC. We could get a bit of a break on Sunday, so that's good. Some of the smoke clears, and then on Monday, maybe some more smoky weather across the Midwest, maybe a bit more of a break across the northeast. In general though, as long as those fires are still burning up in Canada, we could still be dealing with some more smoky days ahead. Heed all air quality alerts posted for your region. If you're in the very unhealthy to hazardous category, it's just a good idea to stay indoors, limit your time outside, because some of this air is just not good to breathe. Hopefully we will get a little bit more relief as we get later onto this week. And that's all in the weather world today. There's a lot of different things happening. We have the severe weather risk, we have the southwest monsoon, we have the tropical system, we have the smoke. So thanks for sticking with me as we track all these details. Make sure you're staying safe if you're under some of that severe weather. Again, I'll have another video later on this week tracking the potential tropical development and more severe weather with that second system moving into the Midwest and Northeast. Thanks so much for watching again. If you don't want to miss updates in this ever-changing situation, consider subscribing. Otherwise, hope you all have a great rest of your day.